Hi, I'm Michael James. Hit subscribe and let's dive into today's story.
My wife told me I was infertile, but I found out she'd been raising another man's child for 5 years. I met Lena on April 15th, 2013. I remember the date because of the Boston Marathon bombing. The cafe where I stopped after work had TVs mounted on every corner, all of them replaying the same footage of smoke rising over Boylston Street, runners staggering, and people rushing into chaos instead of away from it. The whole cafe was silent except for the anchors' voices, their tones subdued, heavy. That's when I noticed her, standing behind me in line, cardigan sleeves pushed to her elbows, eyes fixed on the screen. She muttered, almost to herself, "Is it weird that things like this make me want to call my mom?" Then she laughed nervously, embarrassed at the confession. Without thinking, I half-joked, "Want to borrow my phone?" She smirked at me, this sly, crooked smile, and shook her head. The line moved forward, but when the seating area filled up, we ended up sharing a table by the window. That was the first real conversation we ever had, the start of something I thought would last forever. At first, Lena was all quick wit and energy, but beneath that, she had this soft patience that made me feel safe. She was an ICU nurse, used to blood, chaos, and 12-hour shifts that left her glassy-eyed. I worked in software, buried in back-end code and bug tickets, a man whose biggest danger at work was spilling coffee on my keyboard. We were opposite ends of a spectrum, but somehow it worked. We built little rituals. Thursday nights became takeout and Netflix nights. Saturdays, we'd walk by the river with travel mugs of coffee. She had a habit of carrying extra hair ties on her wrist in case a stranger needed one, something so small but so her. Our third date, I burned garlic bread black as charcoal. She didn't complain. Instead, she dunked it in sauce and called it campfire chic. I don't think I'd ever laughed harder in my life. The first time she came to Thanksgiving with my parents, she helped my mom in the kitchen, chopping carrots like she'd always belonged there. My dad, who usually kept his words tight as bolts, leaned over the mashed potatoes and said bluntly, "She's a keeper." Lena blushed, tucked her hair behind her ear, and held my hand under the table. By early 2017, I knew. I proposed on a foggy Saturday morning in February, the kind where the air feels like damp wool. My hand shook as I pulled out the ring. She teared up instantly, asked, "Are you sure?" And I told her, "I've never been more sure of anything." She said yes, and we kissed while the park around us blurred in the fog. That summer, when the total solar eclipse crossed the United States on August 21st, 2017, we stood in the street with cardboard viewers. The light dimmed, neighbors cheered, and Lena grabbed my hand so tightly it almost hurt. She whispered, "Hold on to this." I thought she meant the moment. I thought she meant us. Looking back now, I realize beginnings can look just like promises, bright, unshakable, stamped by the universe itself. What I didn't know then was that beginnings and endings often stand in the same hallway. You just don't know which door you're opening until it's too late. We married on September 9th, 2017, in the garden behind a glass conservatory. It wasn't glamorous. Half the eucalyptus was missing from the bouquets, my uncle spilled red wine on his shirt before the vows, and the trumpet player at the reception missed more notes than he hit. But Lena was radiant. She walked toward me in a simple dress that shimmered in the late summer light, and for those minutes, nothing else mattered. After the glow of wedding photos faded, real life crept in. Marriage wasn't lanterns or champagne. It was bills stacked on the counter, long work shifts, and nights where one of us fell asleep on the couch before the other even got home. Lena's hospital schedule ran her ragged, while I lived a steadier rhythm of 9 to 5 coding and late-night debugging. Sometimes our lives lined up perfectly. Other times we felt like two trains passing in the night. The first red flag was barely noticeable. Her phone always lay face down on the table. "I see you have it," she explained casually. "If it's face up, I check every buzz and it drives me crazy. This way, I can ignore it." Reasonable enough. The second flag appeared a few months later, a separate savings account she opened without talking to me. "Just in case," she said. "My mom always kept one. Safety blanket." Given her history, an absent father, a mother who raised her alone through unreliable partners, it made sense. Still, something about it felt like distance. In July 2018, the world was fixated on the Thai cave rescue, the group of boys trapped underground, divers inching them out day by day. Lena and I sat glued to the updates each night, marveling at the sheer willpower of strangers risking everything to save children they didn't know. When the last boy was brought out alive, Lena turned to me with teary eyes and said, "Life's too short not to prepare for the future. We should check our chances now, before we waste years." That's how fertility testing entered our lives. I thought it was proactive, even smart. She booked the appointments, handled the forms, and told me when to fast. "Let me coordinate," she said, brushing my hand as if to reassure me. "I know how to navigate doctors." She was confident, organized, convincing. A week later, she intercepted the mail. "Results came in," she texted. "I'll explain when you get home. Don't worry." That night, she had Thai takeout waiting, as if repeating the theme of our cave rescue evenings. She flipped open the envelope, glanced over it, and then looked at me with a careful smile. "Everything looks fine. We just need patience." I believed her. Why wouldn't I? But small cracks appeared. In November 2018, I suggested telling her mom we were trying. Lena shook her head firmly. "No, She'll just stress me out. Let's keep this hours for now." She smiled and kissed me, the kind of kiss that ended conversations instead of starting them. By January 2019, winter had made our apartment a freezer. One night, we watched a documentary about Apollo 11 with grainy footage of Neil Armstrong stepping onto the moon. "What if we can't?" Lena asked suddenly, her eyes still on the screen. Her voice cracked on the word can't. I reached for her hand. "Then we'll figure it out. There are options." She nodded too quickly, almost rehearsed. "Totally, options." Then she pressed her lips to mine, sealing the doubt away. We threw ourselves into routines, tracking ovulation, trying diets, timing everything like clockwork. When her ships wrecked our plans, she brushed it off as fate. Through it all, she managed our hope like a curator guiding me through an exhibit, choosing what I saw, what I skipped, and how long I lingered. Suspicion doesn't announce itself like a thief kicking in a door. It comes quietly, like water slipping under a floorboard. At the time, I told myself I was imagining things. Later, I would wish I'd paid closer attention.
The word infertile didn't slam into my life. It seeped in slowly, like water through a crack you don't notice until the carpet smells of mold. In June 2019, Lena suggested I redo my tests. "Sometimes the first lab misses things," she said lightly. "We should be thorough." She booked a urologist's office herself in a building I'd never been to, above a dry cleaner with flickering fluorescent lights. "They're good," she assured me. "One of the residents trained at my hospital." I went through the motions, signed in, gave samples, and waited. The staff seemed efficient but distant. A week later, Lena picked me up outside my office with a manila envelope balanced on her lap. "Let's look at this at home," she said. Her tone was careful, her knuckles pale against the paper. We parked in the garage under our building. Inside the envelope, on heavy letterhead, were words that rearranged my identity. Azospermia. Genetic likelihood. Zero motility. I had to read the sentences 3 times before they clicked. According to the paper, I was infertile. I remember sitting there, staring at the neat typography, as if fonts could decide a man's fate. Lena put her hand on my knee. "We'll handle this," she whispered. "There are other ways. We'll figure it out together." That night, fireworks bloomed in the distance. It was July 4, 2019, and our neighbors were on their balconies, cheering. We sat in silence, tied takeout containers on the counter, as I tried to swallow the truth. Everyone else was celebrating independence. I felt like my future had just been taken hostage. We told my parents the following weekend over a stilted FaceTime call. My mother pressed her fingers to her mouth. My dad, always a man of lessons, said, "There are paths. Science is remarkable. Families are made, not just born." Lena was prepared with adoption pamphlets bookmarked on her phone and the word donor already on her tongue. I leaned into her steadiness because I had none of my own. After that, Lena took the reins completely. She said it was better if she kept the paperwork. You shouldn't have to see it every day. She brought a small lockbox for our closet. "I'll handle this," she promised. And I let her. I didn't ask for a key, didn't question the need for secrecy. I told myself it was her way of protecting me. The months that followed blurred into cautious hope. We looked at adoption orientations online, sat through Zoom sessions in church basements where volunteers spoke in hushed tones about forever families. Sometimes Lena grew teary-eyed, saying, "This is the way we'll do it. This is how we'll become parents." Then came 2020, the year when the entire world tilted. On March 11th, the World Health Organization declared COVID-19 a pandemic. Within days, schools closed, cities shut down, and Lena's hospital exploded with chaos. Her phone buzzed constantly with schedule changes, emergency shifts, endless pleas for staff. She moved into her mother's house for a while, saying it was to protect me, since her mom was also high risk. "It's better this way," she insisted. "You'll be safer." Our apartment grew quiet. I tried baking sourdough like everyone else, but my starter died in a week. I FaceTimed Lena every night. She looked exhausted, her eyes rimmed red from the constant churn of alarms and ventilators. She spoke in fragments, always half distracted. "One of the birth mothers Kelsey's been working with might be a match. I'll handle the details." I asked who Kelsey was. "A social worker," she replied quickly. "She's helping with private placements since the agency has slowed down." Shouldn't I meet her?" I asked. "You will, later, when it's safe." It sounded reasonable at the time. Everything was chaos. Why not this too? But the longer she stayed away, the more I wondered whether the distance was about safety or something else entirely.
The baby didn't come into our lives with careful planning or ceremony. She arrived like a storm system that had been building just out of sight. Late June 2020, Lena called me while I was pacing the apartment. "The birth mother's in labor," she said quickly, her voice almost too steady. "It's happening. I'll handle everything. Just be ready when I bring her home." Because of COVID restrictions, I wasn't allowed into the hospital. I drove circles around the parking lot, mask in my lap, hands sweating on the steering wheel. Hours passed with no updates. Finally, Lena emerged through the automatic doors, a bundle wrapped in hospital blankets against her chest. Her hair was plastered to her forehead, her eyes wet. "Meet our daughter," she said softly. We named her Maya. The name seemed to appear out of thin air. We hadn't debated lists or middle names. Lena simply said it, and I agreed, because in that moment, every word felt fragile. A photo from that day still sits in a drawer. Lena in scrubs, me with a mask hanging from one ear, both of us looking stunned as we held a baby that felt more like a miracle than a reality. At home, Maya turned our routines inside out. Bottles stacked in the sink, sleepless nights, lullabies whispered in the dark. I tried rocking her one way, then another, until Lena laughed at my awkwardness and showed me how to sway from the hips, not the shoulders. Slowly, we learned. Slowly, we became a family. But questions lingered. Adoption paperwork dragged on endlessly. The courthouse was backlogged, the agency understaffed. "It's normal," Lena said each time I asked. "Private adoptions take forever." She started meeting a social worker named Kelsey for check-ins, always going alone. "It's quicker if I handle it. You stay home with Maya." I wanted to believe her, and most days I did. Then came January 6th, 2021. I remember the date with sick clarity. I was holding Maya on the couch when the news showed people storming the U.S. Capitol. Glass breaking, flags waving, anchors tripping over themselves to find words. The baby was chewing on a toy giraffe, blissfully unaware. Lena stood at the sink, phone in her hand, face pale. "The world's insane," she muttered. I agreed, but in my chest, another thought flickered. So is this adoption story. Still, daily life smothered doubt. We celebrated Maya's first birthday with a small cake and a Zoom call to my parents. Lena snapped dozens of photos, her laughter ringing through the kitchen. For that day, everything felt real, solid, the way families are supposed to feel. But small inconsistencies piled up. Envelopes with odd addresses. Phone calls Lena took on the balcony, her voice hushed. Once, I noticed an envelope of cash in her glove compartment. "Courier fee," she explained quickly. "Adoptions are messy." I wanted to press her. I wanted to demand details. But each time I opened my mouth, she'd place Maya in my arms, and all my sharp questions dulled into silence. Looking at that little girl's face, I told myself that maybe love mattered more than legalities. Spring came, and with it the first real hint of suspicion. A neighbor commented, "She looks just like Lena." I laughed it off, but that night, staring at Maya sleeping in her crib, I saw it too. The same chin, the same eyes. My heart skipped, then settled. Families share features all the time, even adoptive ones. That's what I told myself. But deep down, a part of me wondered. And once that question rooted itself, it didn't leave.
For a long time, I convinced myself I was overthinking. Parenthood is messy. Adoption is messy. Life in a pandemic is messy. But by mid-2022, the cracks in Lena's story weren't just small. They were widening into fractures I couldn't ignore. The first jolt came in June 2022. On June 24, the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade. The whole country seemed to shake, protests in the streets, endless coverage on every channel. That same day, Lena stood at the window with her phone in her hand, texting furiously while the news blared. I caught a glimpse of the screen when she set it down to wipe Maya's chin. A message preview lit up. "She looks just like you." My chest tightened. Who was you? A friend? A nurse she worked with? A birth relative? When I asked later, Lena brushed it off. "Oh, Kelsey sent that. She thinks Maya resembles me. People say that sometimes." She laughed, but her eyes didn't match her mouth. I nodded, though unease stuck to me like damp clothes. A year later, the doubts wouldn't leave. I kept circling back to the fertility diagnosis, the adoption delays, the cash envelopes. My gut whispered that something wasn't adding up. In June 2023, after reading about the Titan submersible disaster, the one where 5 people died near the Titanic wreck, I found myself lying awake thinking about mortality and truth. The thought drilled into me, what if I'd been living inside someone else's script? So I ordered an at-home male fertility test. Just a cheap kit, the kind you order online. I told myself it was curiosity, nothing more. When the results popped up on the app, I stared at the screen like it had grown teeth. Motile, normal range, not 0, not even close. My stomach dropped. Either the earlier diagnosis was wrong, or it had been a lie. I booked an appointment at a different clinic, quietly, without telling Lena. January 2024, snow blanketed the sidewalks as I handed over my ID and tried to act normal. A week later, the doctor leaned across the desk and said, "I'm not sure why you were told azospermia. Your counts are within normal limits. Nothing here suggests 0. It felt like the floor dropped out from under me. "But I have paperwork," I protested weakly. She shook her head. "If you bring it, I'll review it. But based on today, you're fertile." That night, while Lena showered, I pulled the little lockbox from our closet. I found the letter inside, the one she'd shown me back in 2019. For the first time, I studied it closely. The patient ID looked generic. The signature, faintly pixelated. I Googled the doctor's office listed at the top. It was real, but not located above a dry cleaner, and they had no record of me as a patient. My hands shook as I set the papers down. Every detail that had once reassured me now screamed the opposite. I confronted Lena in small ways over the next few days, asking about the paperwork, about Kelsey. Each time she had quick answers. Too quick. "You don't need to stress over the details," she said one night, brushing my cheek. "What matters is we're parents now." But once you notice a lie, it's impossible not to see its shadow everywhere. And deep down, I knew, if I kept pulling on this thread, our whole life might undo.
I couldn't carry the weight of suspicion anymore. Each day with Maya was a joy, but each look at Lena felt like walking across thin ice. Smiles covered tension, dinners tasted like cardboard, and silence lingered in every room. I knew the truth was close, waiting to tear through us. The moment came on April 8, 2024, the day of the total solar eclipse. Neighbors crowded the street with cardboard viewers and flimsy glasses, marveling at the dimmed light. Inside, our apartment felt like twilight, even with the curtains open. Maya napped in her room. I placed the lockbox on the table between Lena and me. My voice shook. "I went to another clinic. They tested me. I'm not infertile. The letter you gave me was fake. And Kelsey isn't a licensed social worker." She froze, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "Okay," she said finally, her voice hollow. "Okay. I want the truth. No more detours. Who is Maya's father?" Her eyes flicked toward the bedroom door, then back to me. "You already know," she whispered. It came out in fragments, each word carving something out of me. In early 2020, while the world unraveled with COVID and her ER shifts left her ragged, she grew close to a coworker, an EMT named Evan. One night became more. Then weeks later, she realized she was pregnant. She panicked. She told him I was infertile, that we had agreed on a private adoption to protect me. She spun a story where I was the willing husband, shielded from painful details. She said, "I thought I was protecting us. I thought if the story was clean, no one had to be the villain." "You forged medical records," I said, my voice breaking. "You built our family on a lie." Our shoulders collapsed inward. I thought it was the only way to keep us. And when Maya was here, I couldn't undo it. I wanted to scream. Instead, I whispered, "You stole my choice. You stole my right to decide what family means." We sat in silence until Maya stirred, crying softly in her room. The sound shattered the moment. Lena stood, wiping her face. "She's still ours," she whispered. "You've been her father every day." But the words bounced off me. I felt hollow, like the eclipse outside had swallowed my insides as well. I demanded a DNA test to make it official, to put ink where betrayal already lived. She nodded. "I'll do it," she said, almost relieved. A week later, the results arrived. Probability of paternity? 0.00%. My name might be on the birth certificate, but biology told a different story. When I read the paper, it was strangely quiet outside. No shouts, no cars honking, just the steady hum of the refrigerator and the weight of my breathing. I folded the document and slid it back into the envelope, not knowing whether to laugh, cry, or burn it. That night, I slept on the couch while Lena cried in the bedroom. We both woke up shattered, yet still had to change diapers, pack lunches, and smile for Maya. Parenthood didn't pause for heartbreak. The following weeks blurred. We moved around each other carefully, like two people in a house made of glass. When I finally spoke to my parents, I told them the truth straight. My mother wept quietly. My father shook his head and said, "We'll love that girl regardless. She's family." Their support steadied me, but didn't erase the wound. Every time Maya looked at me with those trusting eyes, I felt both stronger and more broken. She was innocent. She was mine in every way that mattered, except the one Lena had lied about from the beginning.
I live now in a small rental with too many mirrors and not enough warmth. The walls echo at night, but Maya's laughter fills them on the days she stays with me. We've settled into a custody rhythm. 2 nights with me, 2 with Lena, alternating weekends. It's awkward, but it works. I bought duplicates of her favorite bedtime books, so she doesn't have to miss Good Night construction site, no matter which house she's in. When the Paris Olympics opened on July 26, 2024, I watched the ceremony alone, takeout spread across the counter, while the Parade of Nations streamed on the TV. The screen showed fireworks over the sign, boats drifting under lights, a world celebrating together. I thought about how, at that exact moment, Lena was probably reading Maya a story, or maybe tucking her in. 2 separate worlds, one child stretched between them. Friends told me I should hate Lena. Some said forgiveness was the only path forward, but the truth is complicated. Do I hate her? Some days. Do I still love her? In pieces, yes. But love and trust aren't the same currency, and she spent every last cent of mine. I don't think forgiveness means pretending it never happened. I think it means learning how not to let bitterness be the only language I speak. I'm still her legal father. The lawyer explained it carefully. Because I'm on the birth certificate, and because I raised Maya since birth, the court recognizes me as a parent. That gave me relief and terror in equal measure. Relief that no one can take her from me. Terror that she'll someday learn the truth and see me differently. I've rehearsed that conversation in my head 100 times. Someday she'll ask why her eyes look like Lena's and not mine. Why her features echo a man she doesn't know. I'll have to tell her the truth, gently, without handing her the weight of betrayal. I'll say, families are made of choices, not just blood. And every day since the moment you came home, I've chosen you. Therapy helps. My therapist has a print of the solar eclipse hanging above her desk, a black circle with light bleeding around it. She asked me once what I'd lost. I said, the feeling that my home was where the truth slept. I don't want to lose that again. If there's a lesson in all this, it isn't about catching red flags sooner, though maybe I should have. It's about the way lies corrode. They don't explode all at once. They drip, 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 until you're standing ankle-deep in water wondering when the flood began. Love, I've learned, needs the same thing science does. Transparency, accountability, and proof that can stand up to scrutiny. When I think back to April 15th, 2013, the day of the Boston Marathon bombing, the day I first saw Lena in that cafe, I realize how much beginnings can deceive us. They feel like destiny. They feel unshakable. But sometimes they're just the start of a story that won't end the way you thought. Still, I don't regret the years with her because they gave me Maya. Every morning she runs into my arms, hair tangled, smile wide, yelling, "Daddy!" And in that moment, the betrayal, the lies, the paperwork, they all fade. What remains is this truth. I am her father. That's not something Lena gave me, or Evan, or any court. That's something I claim every time I show up. Every time I love her without condition. I may never trust Lena again. I may never untangle the bitterness fully. But I know who I am. And when Maya is old enough to understand, I hope she'll know too. Sometimes family isn't the story you're told. It's the story you choose to live.
Another story ends, but there are always more. Subscribe and stay tuned.